Fix it. Now you have less than 8 hours. And for God's sake, don't call me again. The click of the phone line going dead was a physical blow. My knuckles whitened as I clutched the phone, the cold plastic digging into my palm. It wasn't a request. It was an order, delivered with the casual brutality of a man who knew he could walk away and leave me to drown. I slammed the phone down onto my desk. The flimsy plastic of the landline rattled against the wood. Julian, our CTO, the man whose face was plastered on every bus stop ad for Helios Systems, had just called a critical defense vulnerability a false alarm. A $23 million defense contract with Renex Tech, the deal that could secure our company's future for a decade, was hanging by a thread, and he was already halfway out the door for the night. False alarm, I muttered to myself, the words tasting like ash. I glared at my monitor, where a blinking red siren screamed a different story. Firewall breach detected. Varian external endpoint integration. It was no false alarm. It was a gaping wound. A security hole so big you could fly a jumbo jet through it. My entire team had been working on this for months, meticulously building the digital fortress. And now, a week before launch, some amateur hacker, or worse, a rival, had found the single point of failure. My heart hammered against my ribs. Not from fear, but from a cold, simmering rage. Julian didn't care. He had just thrown a match into a building and walked away, expecting me, Evelyn, Director of Defense Integrations, to put out the fire. And the worst part? He knew I would. He counted on it. I swiveled my chair to face the panoramic window, the glittering lights of Manhattan mocking my solitary confinement. The office was an echo chamber of my own frustration. I pulled my laptop closer, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Every keystroke was an act of defiance. Every line of code I wrote was a silent scream against the injustice. This wasn't just a technical problem anymore. It was personal. Julian would get all the credit if I succeeded, and if I failed, he'd have a scapegoat waiting. He would tell Daniel Shaw, our manager, that he had detected a potential issue and tasked Evelyn with an emergency fix, making me sound like a desperate freelancer while he played the hero. A sharp, resentful laugh escaped my lips. Fine. Let him think that. I would not only fix his mess, but I would make him regret the day he ever thought I was his pawn. The clock on my screen ticked relentlessly. 7 hours, 52 minutes. The night was long, but my resolve was longer. I was going to save this contract, not for them, but for myself. And when it was over, I would ensure everyone knew exactly whose shoulders the weight of this company truly rested upon. The first night blurred into the second, and the second into the third. My world shrank to the glowing screen, a chaotic symphony of code and blinking cursors. The exhaustion was a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders, making my eyes burn. I hadn't eaten anything substantial, surviving on a cocktail of stale coffee and pure, unadulterated fury. My only company was the hum of the servers and the ghost of Julian's condescending voice echoing in my head. Sometime around 4 a.m. on the second night, a soft knock on my office door broke the silence. "Still at it, miss?" A gentle, older man's voice, a stark contrast to the harshness I was used to. It was Mr. Thompson, the night security guard. He held a styrofoam cup and a bag. "Mr. Thompson?" I said, my voice a raspy whisper. "What are you doing up so late?" He chuckled softly. "Someone has to keep an eye on things. I saw the lights on. Thought you might need this." He placed the cup and a small bag on my desk. "Coffee, black, and a donut, from the break room." "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. "You didn't have to." "Just doing my job, ma'am." he said, and for a moment, his eyes, lined with wrinkles, held a look of profound understanding. You're a real one, you know that? Not many people would put in this kind of time. I just nodded, unable to form a coherent reply. He gave a small nod and left, his quiet presence a brief, welcome anchor in the storm of my work. By the time the sun began to paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, the vulnerability was sealed. But in my exhausted state, I made a near-fatal mistake. My hands, numb from typing, fumbled, and I hit send on an unpolished draft of the proposal. My heart seized. A half-finished document, filled with messy TBD notes, had just been sent to Victor Thorne, the head of Renex Tech. He was the one man I couldn't afford to look incompetent in front of. I frantically hit the unsend button, watching the progress bar crawl across the screen. I managed to recall it just in time, but the sheer panic sobered me up instantly. I spent the next 2 hours rebuilding the proposal from scratch, driven by the terror of my mistake. By 6:45 a.m., with the city fully awake, I hit send on the final, polished version. It was flawless. The adrenaline that had carried me through the night evaporated instantly, leaving me with nothing but bone-deep exhaustion. I stumbled towards the elevator, my vision tunneling. The last thing I remembered was the cold metal of the elevator button before the world went black. I woke up to the smell of disinfectant. My head was pounding, and my body felt like it had been run over by a truck. A nurse told me I had fainted from exhaustion. My phone, charging on the bedside table, was buzzing with notifications. The first was a text from Charlotte, a UX designer I was friendly with. "Hey, you okay?" Mr. Thompson told me what happened. "You saved the company, Evelyn. You're a hero." I smiled faintly, but the feeling was short-lived. The second notification was an email from HR. Urgent, time logs. My stomach twisted. It was a formal inquiry about my work hours, a veiled accusation of a security breach. They were already building their case against me. Julian had been busy. 3 days later, I was back at work. The office's sterile air feeling more foreign than ever. The HR email about my time logs gnawed at me, a constant, low-grade thrum of anxiety. Julian's message was clear. No good deed goes unpunished. I had saved the company, and now I was being treated like a security risk. My phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Transition discussion, Mark Davis. My stomach clenched. Mark was the new head of my department. I walked into his office, a sick feeling of dread pooling in my gut. "Evelyn, thank you for coming in." Mark gestured to the chair opposite his sleek, minimalist desk. He was a man with a perpetually slicked-back haircut and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. I sat down, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. "Mark, is everything okay?" He leaned forward, his hands clasped together on the desk. "Evelyn, you've been a tremendous asset to Helios Systems. Your recent work on the Renex Tech proposal was, well, truly remarkable." A small, fragile glimmer of hope flickered within me. This was it, the promotion I'd earned. "Thank you, Mark. I worked around the clock on it." "And it showed," he said, the smile on his face not quite reaching his eyes. "Which is why this is so difficult. We are making a structural adjustment within the department. As part of this, your position as Director of Defense Integrations has been eliminated." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Eliminated?" I heard myself whisper, the word sounding alien. My world spun. "Yes, a streamlining of resources," he continued, as if discussing office supplies. "We're consolidating some roles to improve efficiency." I wanted to laugh, a bitter, hollow sound. Efficiency? I just saved a $23 million contract for this company. I worked 39 hours straight to fix a problem Julian dismissed as nothing. My voice rose with each word, my hands clenching into fists. And now you're telling me my position has been eliminated? Mark's expression remained annoyingly serene. The project succeeded, and that's what matters. Julian's leadership ensured the delivery of the proposal. He's been an exceptional asset. My blood ran cold. Julian's leadership? I felt a surge of pure fury. I pulled out my laptop and frantically navigated to the company server. I opened the folder for the Renex Tech proposal. There it was, a new version, submitted hours after I had fainted. I clicked on File Properties. Author, Julian Vance. I slammed the laptop shut. He took credit for my work. He put his name on my proposal. Mark sighed, a patronizing sound. Evelyn, the company is not about individual achievements. It's about teamwork. Julian's name was on the proposal because he is the CTO. He oversees your work. He didn't oversee anything. He abandoned me to a ticking time bomb. I shot back, my voice trembling with suppressed fury. He knew about the breach and he walked away. Mark's smile finally vanished. His voice dropped to a cold, hard tone. That's enough. This is a business decision. Your severance package has been outlined in the documents on your desk. Please collect your personal items and hand in your access badge to security on the way out. I didn't bother to argue. My anger had hardened into something cold and sharp. I stood up, gathered the documents without looking at them, and walked out of the office. As I passed my old desk, my vision blurred with a mix of exhaustion, betrayal, and a fierce, burning resolve. They thought they could erase me? They were about to learn they had just made their biggest mistake. 3 days passed in a haze of anger and disbelief. The severance package papers sat untouched on my kitchen counter, a bitter reminder of my dismissal. I was a ghost in my own apartment, replaying the scene with Mark over and over, each time feeling the hot sting of betrayal. I thought about calling Julian, but what was the point? He was a coward, and cowards don't argue. They just retreat and leave others to clean up their mess. My phone rang, its jarring sound a welcome interruption to the oppressive silence. It was an unknown number with a New York area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some instinct told me to answer. Evelyn Vance? A professional but unfamiliar voice asked. Speaking, I said, my voice guarded. This is Victor Thorne, from Renex Tech. My heart leaped into my throat. The head of the company I had just saved from a potential security disaster? My mind raced. Mr. Thorne, I'm surprised you're calling. He chuckled, a rich, deep sound. I assure you, I'm not. The team at Renex Tech has been reviewing the proposal you submitted. It's brilliant. The best we've seen. We were ready to close the deal with Helios Systems. A knot of hope tightened in my stomach. Thank you. I put everything into it. Yes, I can tell, he said, his tone turning serious. Which is why my team and I are having a difficult time. We just received word that you are no longer with Helios Systems. The hope deflated, replaced by a cold dread. That's correct. Well, that complicates things. We don't trust Helios Systems without you. His words were like a lifeline in the churning ocean of my despair. Evelyn, we're reconsidering the deal. We have a policy. We bet on people, not companies. And quite frankly, we don't believe Helios has the leadership to execute this project without you at the helm. So, here's my proposition. If you were to join our biggest competitor, say, Renex Solutions, we'd be open to rerouting the entire project. The $23 million contract. The name of my former company's biggest rival, felt like a spark igniting a fire within me. Renex Solutions, I repeated, letting the words sink in. The irony was sweet, a delicious revenge. That's the one. Think about it. We can set up a meeting. You have my number, Victor said. I hung up the phone, a slow smile spreading across my face. Julian had wanted me gone. Mark had thought my position was eliminated. They had taken my work and tossed me aside like an empty coffee cup. But they hadn't counted on the one person who truly understood the value of my work, the client themselves. They had thought they had won. They were wrong. The game had just begun. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of focused fury. I had a new purpose, a burning desire to not just get back on my feet, but to build an empire from the ashes of my old life. The first thing I did was call Victor Thorne back. Mr. Thorne, I've thought about your offer, I said, my voice steady and confident. I'm in. Excellent. You have what it takes, Evelyn. I knew it, he said, his voice a low hum of approval. I'll arrange a meeting for you with the CEO of Renex Solutions, Mr. Bennett. Let's get the ball rolling. I hung up and immediately went to work. I wasn't just going to show up to this meeting with a new version of the old proposal. I was going to use everything they had so carelessly thrown away. I retrieved my personal work files, the architectural frameworks, the proprietary code snippets I had developed, the strategic analyses I had created over years. These weren't company property. They were the products of my own expertise, my sleepless nights, my intellectual property. They were the very foundation of my work, and now they were my weapons. The phone rang again. It was my old coworker, Ben. He sounded hushed, almost conspiratorial. Evelyn, is it true? He asked, his voice low. Did they really fire you? They eliminated my position, I corrected, the words dripping with sarcasm. What's going on, Ben? Julian's been telling everyone you had a breakdown, he whispered, that you were stressed and that's why they had to let you go. A cold wave of revulsion washed over me. He's lying. I know, Ben said, his voice full of sympathy. But that's not all. I got an anonymous audio file sent to me. It's a recording of Julian and Mark talking. My heart hammered in my chest. Ben, can you send it to me? Already did. It's a bit rough, but you can hear everything. Julian's gloating about it. He told Mark he had to trim that line item and give himself credit because he was as smart to move first. The audio file arrived a moment later. I listened to it twice. Julian's smug, arrogant voice was unmistakable. He had planned this. He had seen my exhausted state as an opportunity, a chance to take credit for my work and push me out. The betrayal, which had been a dull ache, now sharpened into a furious, burning certainty. This wasn't just a business deal anymore. This was a war. I spent the next 48 hours hunched over my laptop, fueled by a potent mix of coffee and vengeance. I meticulously crafted a new proposal for Renex Solutions. It wasn't just better, it was a masterpiece. It incorporated all my old work, but refined and improved. I had their weaknesses mapped out, their vulnerabilities exposed, and their path to victory clearly defined. The meeting with Mr. Bennett was set for that afternoon. I walked into the lobby of Renex Solutions, my head held high. I wasn't just a former employee looking for a new job. I was an architect of revenge, a strategist ready to take back what was mine. The boardroom at Renex Solutions was designed to intimidate. Every line was sharp, every surface polished to perfection, as if the room itself had been carved from authority. The mahogany conference table stretched nearly the entire length of the room, gleaming under recessed lighting. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened to the city skyline, towers of glass and steel reflecting the late afternoon sun. It was the kind of view meant to remind anyone sitting in that room of both opportunity and risk. The city could raise you up or swallow you whole. But I wasn't distracted. My eyes were fixed on the man at the head of the table. Mr. Charles Bennett, CEO of Renext Solutions, had the kind of presence that silenced chatter the moment he entered a room. His dark suit was tailored to perfection, his silver hair combed back with the discipline of a man who demanded order in all things. His expression revealed nothing. His eyes were sharp, cold, and appraising. If you didn't know better, you might have mistaken him for a judge instead of a businessman. To his right sat Victor Thorne, the one man in this company who had quietly vouched for me, who had believed in me before anyone else had reason to. He wasn't flamboyant, Victor never was, but his stillness carried weight. When he nodded at something, people paid attention. His presence in this meeting was my silent endorsement, my shield against doubt. Bennett's deep voice finally broke the silence. "Evelyn," he began, measured and deliberate. "Victor tells me you have a proposal. He's impressed, and that's no small thing." I slid a slim leather portfolio onto the table and rested my hand lightly on it. Inside were weeks of work, but more than that, inside were years of anger, betrayal, and determination. I kept my voice calm, though my heart hammered with anticipation. "I have more than a proposal, Mr. Bennett," I said evenly. "I have a guarantee." His eyebrow lifted in skepticism, the faintest crack in his carefully neutral facade. "A guarantee?" he echoed, his tone carrying both curiosity and challenge. "That's a dangerous word in this business." I leaned forward slightly, letting my voice sharpen. I was the architect of Helios Systems' defense integration framework, the one they paraded as their crown jewel, the system they used to secure your attention, and nearly your business. I designed it, I built it, and I am the only one who knows every strength and every weakness it carries. I let the words linger, a calculated silence. "They didn't just fire me," I continued, my voice hardening. "They erased me. They handed my work to Julian Vance, a man who couldn't architect his way out of a paper bag, and then had the audacity to let him take credit. They thought by discarding me, they could erase my contributions. But what they've done is far more dangerous. They've left themselves without the strategist who actually held their system together." Victor leaned forward, his quiet authority filling the room. His eyes gleamed as if savoring the strike I had just delivered. "Evelyn is right, Bennett," he said smoothly. "This isn't just a bid for a contract. It's a strategic opening. Helios without Evelyn is like a ship without a rudder. Their framework looks solid on the outside, but no one else truly understands it. They've lost the mind that made it work. With her here, we can do more than win. We can dismantle their advantage for years to come." Bennett's gaze didn't shift from me, though I could feel him weighing Victor's words. He steepled his fingers, the gesture deliberate, like a man examining a chessboard before making his move. "And what?" he asked slowly. "Do you want in exchange for this so-called guarantee?" The question was expected. Still, I paused, not because I was uncertain, but because silence, wielded properly, was as powerful as any argument. Finally, I spoke, my voice unwavering. "I want to lead the project," I said. "Not as an employee, not as a consultant, for hire, easily discarded. I want a partnership. I want the same title I held at Helios, Director of Defense Integrations. Only this time, I want full control. My team, my resources, my decisions." The air in the room tightened. Even Victor glanced at me, just for a second, as though confirming I was truly staking this claim. "That is a high price, Miss Vance," Bennett said at last. His voice carried a subtle edge, the kind men use when they test whether steel will bend or break. "We don't hand over control so easily here. Renex doesn't gamble." "I'm not asking you to gamble," I shot back, leaning forward, my eyes locked on his. "I'm asking you to invest in a certainty. Helios had a sure thing in me, and they threw it away in the name of politics. I am not simply a technician. I am a strategist. I know how to win contracts, deliver them flawlessly, and build teams that dominate markets. You're not just buying a project. You're investing in the architect who knows how to win and how to destroy those who betray her." Silence fell like a hammer. The ticking of the sleek silver clock on the wall seemed deafening in the stillness. Bennett finally glanced at Victor. Victor gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. That nod carried more weight than any speech. Bennett's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "A sure thing, you say?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me as though seeing me for the first time. Then he extended a hand across the polished wood. "All right, Miss Vance, you have your partnership. Your terms are accepted. We'll start tomorrow." For a moment, I felt the ground shift beneath me. Months of humiliation, betrayal, and rage condensed into a single surge of vindication. I placed my hand firmly in his, the grip not just a handshake, but a contract of intent. "The $23 million is coming to us," Bennett added, his tone almost casual, as though we hadn't just redrawn battle lines. Relief washed through me, sharp and cleansing, immediately followed by something darker and stronger. Triumph. They thought they had destroyed me. They thought Julian's smile, Mark's signature, and Helios's politics could bury me. But in this room, at this table, I had just turned their betrayal into my weapon. This wasn't just the beginning of a new job. It was the opening move in their ruin, and I would make sure every stone they had built their empire upon came crashing down, one calculated strike at a time. The weeks that followed my agreement with Renex Solutions were a blur, but a blur I controlled, directed, and shaped into something formidable. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting to betrayal or scrambling to protect my name. I was building. My new corner office at Renext overlooked the same skyline I had once stared at from Helios, but the view no longer mocked me. It wasn't a reminder of confinement or invisibility. From here, the city looked like an empire waiting to be claimed. And this time, I wasn't someone else's discarded pawn. I was the one holding the board. The office itself was a statement. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyscrapers, while sleek black shelves lined with technical manuals and strategic binders stood behind my desk like soldiers ready for command. A long table in the corner had been added for team huddles. My request, not Bennett's. I didn't want isolation. I wanted strategy sessions where ideas could be tested and sharpened like blades. On the morning of our first official team meeting, I stood at the head of the long Renext conference table, heart steady, eyes sharp. Around me sat the people I had personally chosen. Some were seasoned engineers with the scars of corporate battles etched into their eyes. Others were newcomers, fresh-faced, idealistic, still carrying that fire of wanting to prove themselves. Together, they weren't just employees. They were my army. I took a deep breath, then began. "All right, listen up. Helios Systems believes they've secured Renex Tech's contract. They believe we're just another competitor nipping at their heels." My tone hardened. "They are wrong. They've underestimated us, and more importantly, they've underestimated me." The room shifted. Some sat straighter. Others exchanged glances, curiosity piqued. A young engineer, barely out of grad school, raised his hand. "Chris, brilliant. earnest and courageous enough to speak up. "Evelyn," he said carefully, "with all respect, Helios's framework is strong. We've studied it for months. It's their core advantage." I let his words hang in the air before answering. Then, slowly, deliberately, I smiled. It was their strength, and I was its architect. Gasps, murmurs, whispers. I could feel the ripple move across the room like a current. I had anticipated it. I welcomed it. "I know every line of code in that system," I continued, voice rising in conviction. "Every shortcut, every patch, every vulnerability. I know where they cut corners, where they slapped duct tape on gaping holes and called it innovation. They think their system is untouchable. It isn't, because the one who made it untouchable is standing right here." The murmurs stopped. Now they were listening, truly listening. I let my eyes sweep the room, meeting each gaze. We're not going to outmatch them on a fair playing field. We don't need to. We are going to outmaneuver them. We'll build a proposal that does more than meet Renex Tech's requirements. We'll anticipate Helios's flaws, expose their weaknesses, and prove we can do what they cannot. This isn't just competition. This is reclamation. Silence, thick with energy, filled the room. I could feel the fire taking hold. Later that afternoon, I gathered my core leadership team. Just 6 of us, the sharpest minds I trusted. In the privacy of my office, I played the audio file Ben had sent me months ago. Julian's voice filled the space, smug and careless. "Trim that line item. We'll deal with the fallout later. Evelyn's smart enough to move first anyway." I watched their faces as the recording played. Anger, disgust, resolve. Exactly what I wanted. "This," I said, gesturing toward the speaker, "is the mindset of Helios's leadership. They're not builders anymore. They're cullers. They cut corners, they patch with arrogance, and they gamble with clients' trust. This is what we're up against. And this," I pointed to us, "is why we'll win." It wasn't about contracts anymore. It wasn't even about money. For me, it was about dignity reclaimed, about exposing corruption and deceit with skill and relentless competence. For my team, it became about fighting for something bigger than a paycheck. We weren't just workers. We were avengers of integrity. We dove into work like soldiers preparing for war. Days bled into nights, but there was no fatigue, only determination. Engineers huddled over terminals, analysts scribbled across whiteboards, and strategists argued fiercely before arriving at sharper, better answers. I moved among them constantly, not as a distant director issuing commands, but as a commander in the trenches, sleeves rolled up, voice steady, vision unwavering. Chris, the young engineer, surprised us all with his relentless insight into systems optimization. Clara, a veteran project manager who had seen 3 companies rise and fall, became my right hand, quietly orchestrating the chaos into momentum. Every name, every skill, I committed to memory. These weren't just employees. They were the foundation of something bigger, my empire. And while we built, Helios faltered. Word drifted through my network. Deadlines missed, code breaking under pressure, morale collapsing. Julian, the so-called hero they had chosen over me, was floundering. He had no idea how to steer the framework I had created. My old team, the one I had poured years into mentoring, was fractured and leaderless. Rumors said Julian had even tried to call me, multiple times. I never answered. He had said everything he needed to the day he betrayed me. Every missed call was music to my ears, a reminder of his unraveling. The day Victor summoned me into his office, I already knew something monumental had happened. His expression confirmed it, part triumph, part disbelief. "Evelyn," he said, leaning back in his chair, Helios just called. I raised an eyebrow. And? They've admitted they can't meet the deadline. They're pulling out of the bid entirely. They're begging us for a grace period to rework their proposal. For a moment, the words washed over me like warm water, disorienting in their sweetness. My chest tightened with vindication so sharp it was almost painful. "And what did you tell them?" I asked slowly, savoring the moment. Victor's smile widened. "I told them we already have a new partner, and our proposal is ready to go." The final blow. The nail in their coffin. That evening, when Renex Tech officially awarded us the $23 million contract, I sat in my office long after everyone else had gone home. The city outside glittered like 1,000 victories, but none as sweet as this one. I had taken their betrayal, their arrogance, their dismissal of my worth, and I had turned it into the very weapon that destroyed them. I didn't scream, I didn't gloat. I simply built, and by building, I won. I was no longer the invisible woman Helios had discarded. I was the architect of their downfall, and this was only the beginning. News travels fast in the tech world, but scandal travels faster. Within 48 hours of Renex Solutions securing the $23 million contract, whispers had spread through boardrooms, private chat forums, and industry news outlets like wildfire. Helios Systems, the giant, the untouchable, had stumbled. No, they hadn't just stumbled. They had fallen flat on their face, and everyone knew why. They had lost me. Executives traded theories over late-night dinners, analysts speculated on investor calls, and even low-level engineers gossiped in hushed tones in shared kitchens. How could they lose it? People asked, incredulous. How did Renex Solutions, of all companies, win against Helios? And though some whispered about deadlines, about integration problems, about client dissatisfaction, everyone in the know pointed to the same answer. Evelyn Vance. I was no longer invisible. My name was in circulation again, this time not as a background architect, but as a decisive force. I should have felt nothing but satisfaction, yet beneath the vindication was something heavier, like the first silence after a thunderstorm. It was in this silence that my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. New York area code. My pulse quickened. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello, Evelyn?" The voice on the line was frantic, ragged. "Julian." I leaned back in my chair, keeping my tone calm, detached. "Julian." The arrogance that once dripped from his every word was gone. His voice cracked under strain, the desperation bleeding through. "Evelyn, please, you have to help me. The project's a disaster. I don't know what you did, but everything's failing. The integrations, the framework, it won't stabilize. Clients are furious. We're hanging by a thread." A slow smile crept across my face. I didn't let him hear it in my voice, but it was there all the same. "Your team's integrations, Julian? The ones you were so eager to take credit for? Those were my integrations, my architecture, the system you thought you could run without me." I know, he cried, panic edging every syllable. "I was wrong, Evelyn, I was so wrong. I never should have taken credit. I never should have pushed you out. Please, listen. The board is ready to sue us for breach of contract. The clients are threatening to walk away. We need you. I need you." The irony was exquisite. I had once begged them to listen to me, to value me, to see me. And now, here was Julian, begging me. I let the silence stretch, savoring it, before finally replying, my tone laced with steel. "And you expect me to come back? To clean up your mess so you can parade around as the savior again? So you can take credit a second time?" "No." His voice broke. This time, it's different. Evelyn, listen. I spoke with Daniel, with Mark. We've all agreed. We'll give you what you deserve. A senior leadership role. Higher than before. A massive raise. Full control of the division. Whatever you want. Just please come back. For a moment, I allowed myself to picture it. Walking back into those halls, the same office, the same skyline, only this time with authority, recognition, and power. It was everything I had once wanted, laid out before me like a glittering crown. But then the image shattered, because none of it mattered anymore. Their promises, their titles, their money. These weren't rewards. They were bribes born of desperation. Hollow gestures offered by people who only valued me when they were drowning. My voice dropped to a dangerous calm. Julian, you had your chance. You made your choice when you erased me, when you made me invisible. Now you live with the consequences. There was silence on the line. Then, in the smallest, most broken voice I had ever heard from him, he whispered, "Evelyn, please, we're begging you." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly, feeling the weight of years of betrayal finally lifting. Goodbye, Julian. I hung up the phone. The quiet of my office settled around me, broken only by the low hum of servers from the lab next door. I stared out at the city lights, their glow both familiar and foreign. I didn't feel glee or triumphant joy. Instead, a deep, steady calm washed over me. It was over. For so long, I had carried the burden of betrayal like a wound that refused to close. But now, Helios was collapsing under the weight of its own arrogance, and I had no hand in their downfall beyond simply walking away. My revenge wasn't a fiery outburst or a vengeful strike. It was quiet, patient, and devastatingly effective. The industry would talk for years about the contract Renex stole from Helios. They would speculate about corporate missteps and leadership blunders. But I would always know the truth. Their downfall had been sealed the day they chose to betray me. I wasn't the ghost they thought they had buried. I was the architect of their ruin. And for the first time in years, I felt free. The ink on the contract was barely dry when the celebrations began. Victor Thorne, Mr. Bennett, and I gathered in Bennett's sprawling corner office, its glass walls overlooking the glittering city skyline. The champagne was already chilling in a silver ice bucket when I walked in. Victor handed me a glass first. "To Evelyn," he declared, his deep voice carrying a rare warmth. "The woman who did what no one else could, who brought down a giant and built a new empire from its ashes." The crystal flutes clinked together. I raised mine, but I didn't just smile. I laughed, a genuine light laugh I hadn't felt in months. "To teamwork," I corrected softly, "and to second chances." The champagne tasted sharp and cold, the bubbles pricking against my tongue like electricity. It wasn't just a toast. It was a declaration. I had arrived. The rest of the week passed in a blur. My days were consumed with strategy sessions, integration meetings, and the exhilarating rush of leading a team that believed in me without reservation. At night, I would walk past the city lights outside my office, pausing just long enough to remind myself that this view wasn't a cage anymore. It was a testament to how far I'd climbed. For the first time in years, my phone stayed quiet. No more panicked calls from Helios, no desperate emails, no manipulative messages disguised as professional courtesy. Just silence, peace, until it wasn't. Late Thursday afternoon, as I reviewed a technical briefing, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. The number was unfamiliar, but the area code was unmistakable. New York, corporate headquarters. My chest tightened, though I forced myself to stay composed. With deliberate calm, I answered. Evelyn? The voice was tentative, cautious. I knew it instantly. Mark Davis, my former manager. The man who had looked me in the eyes and told me my position was eliminated. The man who handed my life's work to Julian like it was nothing. "This is Evelyn," I said flatly. Mark hesitated, his words faltering as if he couldn't quite bring himself to say them. I'm calling to see how you're doing." I almost laughed. The false concern in his voice was so transparent it was insulting. "I'm doing well, Mark," I replied coolly. "Better than ever." He cleared his throat. "Listen, I know things ended poorly. Julian had nothing to do with it." I cut him off sharply. "You made the decision. You sat across from me and said it was a business call. You gave Julian my credit. You erased me." A long silence. Then softly, "Evelyn, I was just doing what I was told. Julian, he had influence. He convinced the board it was the right move. I'm sorry." The apology landed like dust. Hollow, weightless, meaningless. "Don't be sorry," I said, my voice steel beneath the calm. "Because your decision turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. You showed me that I deserved better than a company willing to throw away its own architect for politics. You forced me to see my worth. For that, Mark, I should thank you." His breathing hitched. I could hear the strain, the quiet panic under his attempt at composure. "Evelyn, Helios is in trouble. The project is collapsing. The clients are furious. Our reputation is, well, you know. We want you back. We're offering what Julian offered you, but more. A senior leadership role. Full control. Name your salary. We'll give you whatever you want." It was laughable. And I did laugh, an unrestrained, mirthless sound that startled even me. "Mark," I said after a long pause, "I already have everything you're offering. A senior role, full control, a team that respects me, and, if I may remind you, I have the biggest contract in our industry. Why would I ever come back?" The silence on the other end was heavy, suffocating. Finally, Mark whispered, "You're not coming back, are you?" "No, Mark," I said firmly. "I'm not. You had your chance, and you wasted it. Goodbye." I hung up before he could say another word. The office was quiet again. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the sweeping cityscape. For years, that view had represented ambition, the mountain I was forever climbing. Then, after the betrayal, it had felt like a wall, a reminder of everything taken from me. Now, it was something else entirely, a reflection of what I had built. A world no longer out of reach, but mine to shape. I thought about the irony. Helios had believed they could replace me with politics, ego, and arrogance. They thought they could erase me. Instead, they erased themselves. Their empire was crumbling, and I hadn't had to lift a hand. All I'd done was prove my worth, and the industry had seen the truth for itself. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice, subtle and undeniable. I smiled to myself, not the bitter smile of survival, but the genuine one of a victor. I hadn't just survived betrayal. I had turned it into my greatest weapon. The last laugh wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was quiet, steady, and final. And it was mine. Months passed, though at times it felt like mere days. Success has a way of bending time, compressing long hours of effort into sharp, unforgettable moments. The $23 million project that had once seemed like a gamble was now the crown jewel of Renex Solutions, and my name was etched into its foundations. Industry reports carried headlines about our triumph. Competitors analyzed our strategies in desperate attempts to replicate them. And Helios? Well, Helios was whispered about in the past tense, a once great name now synonymous with hubris and failure. For me, the transformation was personal. My corner office became more than just a room with a view. It was a vantage point. The glass walls framed the skyline in a way that made me feel suspended above it all, as if every decision I made rippled outward through the city below. Where once the lights represented something I might never reach, now they represented opportunities, endless and bright. My mornings began with coffee brewed in a French press I kept in the office, its rich aroma grounding me before the storm of the day began. My team, my army, would arrive, carrying laptops, notepads, and the kind of energy you only see in people who believe in what they're doing. They trusted me, not because of a title on a business card, but because I had proven that their work mattered, that their contributions built something greater. The project itself exceeded all expectations. Integrations that had stymied other firms fell neatly into place under our design. Clients marveled at the efficiency, at the clarity of our systems, at how seamlessly our solutions anticipated their problems before they even arose. Every week brought fresh praise, new endorsements, and more doors opening. Renext wasn't just climbing the ladder of the industry anymore. We had built an entirely new one, and we were standing at the very top of it. But the greatest shift was internal. There was a peace inside me that I had never known before. Not the fragile kind that comes from avoidance, nor the shallow kind that comes from temporary victories. This was deeper, stronger, the peace of someone who had walked through betrayal, humiliation, and loss, and had not only survived, but had rebuilt herself into something unshakable. One quiet afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the city gold, my phone buzzed against the desk. I glanced at the screen and froze. The name that appeared there was one I had almost grown used to ignoring. Julian Vance. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, as I had so many times before. But something inside me shifted. This wasn't fear anymore. It wasn't dread. It was closure waiting to be claimed. I picked up. "Hello, Julian," I said, my voice calm and steady. There was silence on the other end, then a hesitant whisper. "Evelyn." I didn't think you'd answer. His voice was stripped of the arrogance I remembered. No false charm, no smug inflection. Just a man unraveling. "What do you want, Julian?" I asked evenly. "I wanted to say I was wrong about everything." His voice cracked on the last word, and for a moment, I thought he might break down entirely. "The project is a disaster. I can't fix it. Mark is breathing down my neck. The clients are furious. I've tried, Evelyn. I really have. But I can't do this without you. And I know I never should have taken credit for your work. I was a coward. I let my ego ruin everything. And now, I'm losing it all." I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the glittering skyline. Once upon a time, those words would have been everything I wanted to hear. An admission, an apology, a desperate plea for my help. Now, they meant nothing. They were too late. "I'm sorry to hear that, Julian," I said, my tone flat, stripped of any sympathy. "You're not sorry," he said quietly, almost with resignation. "I don't blame you. But please, Evelyn, is there anything I can do? Anything at all to make this right?" For a moment, I closed my eyes. I thought of the woman I had been months ago. The invisible architect, desperate for recognition, silenced by politics, betrayed by those she trusted. That woman would have grasped at his words like a lifeline. She would have believed him, forgiven him, gone back to clean up his mess. But that woman no longer existed. "You already did all you could, Julian," I said softly, but with an edge of steel. You gave me the chance to see who I really am. You forced me out of a place that didn't deserve me, and because of that, I found myself. For that, I suppose I should thank you." The silence on the other end was long and heavy. Julian didn't know what to say, because there was nothing left to say. "Goodbye, Julian," I finished, my voice calm and final. "I hope you find what you're looking for." I hung up without waiting for a response. The phone lay still on my desk. I stared out the window again, but the city looked different this time. Not because it had changed, but because I had. The skyline was no longer a symbol of ambition or betrayal. It was freedom. It was possibility. It was mine. I had walked through fire and come out tempered, stronger than I ever thought I could be. I had faced betrayal and turned it into fuel. I had taken invisibility and transformed it into undeniable presence. This wasn't about revenge anymore. That fire had burned out, leaving something quieter, steadier, more enduring. Redemption. I sipped the last of my coffee, the warmth lingering on my tongue. My reflection caught faintly in the glass. No longer the weary, unseen woman I once was, but a leader, a builder, a victor. The view from the top wasn't just beautiful, it was boundless. And for the first time, I knew this was only the beginning.